Hollywood held a funeral. Nobody sent flowers. The studios were there. The networks were there. The theater chains were there. Every executive who had spent 30 years building the most powerful entertainment machine in human history gathered in the same room and agreed on exactly one thing. Streaming was a fad. It would never replace the theater. It would never replace appointment television. It would never replace the feeling of walking into a Blockbuster on a Friday night and picking something off the shelf. They were so confident, so unified, so completely, catastrophically wrong. Because while they were busy protecting what they had built, several people were busy replacing it. Each one with a different weapon, a different strategy, a different reason to burn the whole system down. Stay until the end, because the last name on this list is the one nobody talks about. And they might be the most dangerous of all. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. And if you're new here, subscribe, like, and share this video. It helps more than you know. Reed Hastings, the man who mailed the future Blockbuster, had the chance to buy Netflix for $50 million. They laughed him out of the room. That decision is now worth, depending on the day you check the market, somewhere between $200 and $300 billion in destroyed value. Not lost, destroyed, by the people who should have seen it coming and chose instead to laugh. Reed Hastings was not an entertainment person. He was a software engineer from California who got charged a $40 late fee at Blockbuster for Apollo 13 and decided the entire model was broken. The punishment did not fit the crime. And if the punishment did not fit the crime, someone was going to fix it eventually. He decided it would be him. In 1997, he launched Netflix as a DVD by mail service. No late fees, flat monthly subscription. You keep the disc as long as you want. Blockbuster had 1,000 stores and 30 million customers. Netflix had a website and a very patient idea. But here is the part nobody puts in the business school case study. Hastings knew DVDs were not the destination. They were the vehicle. From day one, he named the company Netflix, not Discs by Mail, not Rental Inc. He named it for a future that did not exist yet. A world where everything would travel through the internet instead of the postal service. He was building for a world that had not arrived, and he was willing to wait. Blockbuster eventually launched their own streaming service. 9 years too late. By then, it was over. Being early looks exactly like being wrong, right up until it doesn't. The pivot that saved everything in 2011. Reed Hastings almost destroyed his own company with his own hands. He announced that Netflix would split into 2 separate services. DVDs by mail would become a new company called Quickster. Streaming would stay as Netflix. Subscribers would pay for both separately. The price effectively doubled overnight. 800,000 subscribers canceled in a single quarter. The stock dropped 60% in 4 months. 60%. That is not a bad quarter. That is a company on fire. And then Hastings did something almost no CEO at that level ever does. He admitted he was wrong, publicly, directly, without a legal team crafting every syllable. He killed Quickster before it launched. He wrote a public post that started with 3 words. I messed up. 3 words that cost him more pride than most people spend in a lifetime and saved the company in the process. But the damage was done. The trust was cracked. The critics were circling. And then House of Cards happened. Produced entirely and released all at once. Every episode, same day. No weekly schedule. No network notes. No compromises. Hollywood called it a gimmick, a desperate move from a wounded company. The show won 3 Emmy Awards in its first season. And releasing an entire season at once, something that seemed insane in 2013, became the standard that every platform that followed had to match. The near-death experience did not slow Netflix down. It showed them exactly what they were building. Bob Iger and the empire that fought back for the first decade of streaming. Disney watched. They licensed their content to Netflix, collected the checks, told themselves the theatrical experience was irreplaceable, that families would always show up for a Disney film on the big screen, that streaming was someone else's problem. Bob Iger understood before anyone else inside Disney that this was exactly wrong. In 2017, he made the decision that defined the next decade of entertainment. Disney would pull every piece of its content from Netflix, every Marvel film, Every Star Wars property, every Pixar title, every animated classic, gone. And Disney would build its own streaming platform instead. The analysts called it risky. Netflix called it an opportunity, more space on the platform, more room for originals. The market was skeptical. Disney Plus launched in November of 2019. In its first day, it signed up 10 million subscribers. 10 million in one day. Netflix had taken 3 years to reach 10 million. Disney did it before the servers stopped crashing from demand. Here is what made Disney Plus different from every competitor that tried to fight Netflix. Disney did not just have content. Disney had mythology, characters that 3 generations of the same family had grown up watching. The moment you could see every Marvel film in order, every Star Wars story in sequence, every Pixar title ever made, all in one place. For the price of a monthly subscription, the decision was not really a decision at all. Iger did not beat Netflix by being smarter. He beat them by having something Netflix could never buy: a childhood. The HBO identity crisis. HBO was making prestige television before prestige television had a name. The Sopranos, The Wire, Game of Thrones, Succession. For 3 decades, if you wanted to watch something that felt genuinely important, genuinely cinematic, genuinely unlike anything else on television, you watched HBO. And then AT&T bought them. In 2018, AT&T completed its acquisition of Time Warner, HBO's parent company, for $85 billion. $85 billion for one of the most respected creative institutions in the history of American television. And then spent 3 years trying to figure out what to do with it. What followed was one of the most public identity crises in corporate history. The platform was rebranded from HBO Go to HBO Now to HBO Max to simply Max. Thousands of hours of original content were deleted from the platform entirely. Shows that people had worked years to create, simply removed, in some cases to claim tax write-ups. Creators were furious. Subscribers were confused. But here is the part the outrage cycle missed. Underneath the chaos, the content kept winning. The Last of Us broke HBO viewership records. Succession ended as one of the most discussed television events in a generation. White Lotus became a cultural phenomenon that people would not stop talking about. The platform had an identity crisis at the executive level. The creative level never stopped performing. Sometimes the business is a disaster, and the product is still the best thing on television. HBO has been proving that for 50 years. Daniel Ek and the enemy the music industry needed before Spotify. Music piracy was not slowing the industry down. It was destroying it. Between 1999 and 2014, global recorded music revenue fell from $38 billion to $15 billion. More than half the money gone in 15 years. Napster, LimeWire, BitTorrent. The infrastructure for free music was so deeply embedded in behavior that no lawsuit, no campaign, no legal threat could stop it. Daniel Ek did not stop piracy by making it more illegal. He stopped it by making the legal option better. Ek was 23 years old when he started building Spotify in Stockholm in 2006. His argument was simple and radical at the same time. People were not stealing music because they were criminals. They were stealing it because buying was worse. You had to purchase an entire album for 3 songs. You had to manage files and folders and syncing. The illegal option was faster, simpler, and free. Make the legal option faster, simpler, and nearly free, and people would choose it. The labels did not believe him. Negotiations took years. Some executives refused to meet with him. But Ek understood something the labels had missed. $15 billion from a broken industry was still less than what a working one could generate. Today, Spotify has over 600 million users and pays out more money to rights holders annually than any other platform in history. Music industry revenue has grown every year since 2015. The enemy turned out to be the rescue. Nobody has fully forgiven him for it. The check's still clear. Susan Wojcicki and the platform that was already there. YouTube did not disrupt television. YouTube replaced something television never knew it was competing with: boredom. Susan Wojcicki did not found YouTube. She was the Google executive who pushed Google to acquire it in 2006 for $1.65 billion, a number that seemed insane at the time and looks almost comically small today, given that YouTube now generates more annual revenue than the entire recorded music industry combined. What Wojcicki understood was that YouTube was not a video hosting site. It was a television network with an infinite number of channels, none of which needed a license, a development deal, or a network executive to approve them. Anyone could broadcast. Anyone could build an audience. And the platform took a percentage of every dollar generated in the process. She ran YouTube for 9 years. During that time, she navigated advertiser boycotts, content moderation crises, creator revolts, congressional hearings, and a child safety scandal that nearly unraveled everything the platform had built. And through all of it, YouTube grew. Not because the controversies were handled perfectly. They were not. But because the underlying product, free video, infinite variety, accessible on any device, was solving a problem nobody had articulated before YouTube solved it. Television gave you what it decided you should watch. YouTube gave you what you actually wanted. That sounds obvious now. It took the entire entertainment industry 20 years to understand what it meant. Which platform do you actually spend the most time on? Be honest. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. The price of free here is what nobody tells you about the streaming wars. Nobody is making money. Netflix is profitable. Spotify is not. Disney Plus lost over $10 billion in its first 4 years. HBO Max spent years bleeding cash at a scale that would have killed any other media company. Apple TV Plus does not even break out its streaming numbers separately, which tells you everything you need to know about how those numbers look. The streaming model was built on a premise that has not fully proven itself yet, that subscriber growth would eventually generate enough revenue to justify the content spend, that the losses were investments, that the math would work out. For Netflix, after 25 years, the math is starting to work. For everyone else, the jury is still out. What happened was a classic pattern applied to an industry that had never seen it before. Grow fast, lose money, acquire users, figure out profitability later. The problem is that content is not software. You cannot patch a television show after release. Every dollar spent on content is spent whether the series finds an audience or disappears after one season without anyone noticing. And the amounts are genuinely staggering. Netflix spent $17 billion on content in 2023 alone. $17 billion more than the annual GDP of Iceland spent in 1 year on television shows and films. The scale of the bet is either visionary or catastrophic. And the honest answer is, nobody knows which one yet. Not even them. The next enemy here is what every person on this list has in common. None of them asked for permission. Reed Hastings did not ask Blockbuster if it was acceptable to mail DVDs. Daniel Ek did not ask the music labels if streaming their catalog was allowed. Susan Wojcicki did not ask television networks if letting anyone broadcast to anyone was appropriate. They built. The industry reacted, and by the time the reaction arrived, it was already too late. The streaming wars are not over. They have not reached their most destructive phase yet, because the next disruption is already being built by someone who looked at the current system, the monthly subscriptions, the password sharing crackdowns, the constant price increases, the content pulled without warning, and decided that this, too, is broken. That person is not asking for permission either. The billionaires on this list spent their careers being the ones who moved first. At some point, someone moves first on them. The only question is when. And when it happens, the people being disrupted will probably call it a fad. They always do. They are always so confident, so unified, so completely, catastrophically wrong. Next video. Every billionaire rivalry explained in 15 minutes. The vendettas, the betrayals, the billion-dollar feuds that shaped entire industries. Musk versus Zuckerberg, Jobs versus Gates, Bezos versus everyone. If you don't want to miss that, subscribe. It drops this week. See you in the next one.